Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Creating Resilient Communities, a webinar series. I am Taylor Brown, and I serve as the Public Information Officer here with the Prince George's County Office of Homeland Security and Office of Emergency Management. Tonight, we are hosting our second webinar of our four-part webinar series. We're so excited to have you all with us this evening. We like to get started on time so we can get you in and out and you can enjoy your dinner and your families. So we're going to get right to it. Just want to go over a couple of housekeeping rules as we get started this evening. One being we're going to ask that everyone remain on mute. We will have a question and answer period after our presentations this evening. Please feel free to drop your questions in the chat throughout the presentation. You do not have to wait until the question and answer period to drop your questions in the chat. We have staffs on standby to assist if you have any questions. And we also would like for this to be as interactive as possible. So Zoom allows us to give us thumbs up, clap. So please, if you can, you hear something you like, you learned something new today, we would appreciate getting that feedback from you all. Without further ado, I see one thumbs up. So thank you so much. We're going to get started. First and foremost, we have some remarks from Mr. Joey Henderson, who serves as our Preparedness and Education and Outreach Manager here at the Office of Emergency Management. Mr. Henderson, will you please unmute yourself and step into the virtual platform to bring remarks this evening?
Thank you, Taylor. Good evening, everyone. My name is Joey Henderson. I'm the Preparedness and Outreach Manager with the Prince George's County Office of Emergency Management. I would like to take a moment to welcome you all to our second webinar in our Creating Resilient Communities webinar series. Whether you are joining us for the first time this evening or you've had the pleasure of attending our first webinar last month, we are excited to have you join us. At the beginning of this series, we spoke about what our motto, Creating Resilient Communities, means to this agency and how it drives the work that we do every single day. Our staff is extremely invested in ensuring our residents have the opportunity to learn and obtain the necessary tools and resources needed to be self-sufficient during any disaster or emergency. We know that we must continue the work that we do, that our communities remain strong and resilient during any situation. We hope that you enjoy this webinar this evening, and we look forward to your participation throughout this entire webinar series. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the greetings this evening, Mr. Henderson. All right, we are going to move right into our subject matter for the evening, hazard mitigation. First and foremost, we have special guests with us joining us this evening. We have the Maryland Insurance Administration. So I'm going to ask Ms. Joy Hatchett to please unmute herself and step into the virtual platform. Ms. Hatchett serves as the Associate Commissioner for Consumer Education and Advocacy with the Maryland Insurance Administration. Thank you for joining us this evening, Ms. Hatchett.
Thanks so much, Taylor, for inviting me. And for those of you that don't know, the Maryland Insurance Administration is a state agency, and we are the agency that regulates the insurance industry. We don't sell insurance. We try to help you understand your insurance policies. And then if you have an issue or a problem with an insurance company about how much they're charging you or a claim that you feel is being denied improperly, we're the state agency that you can come to for free, and we can help you with that. And our contact information is on the slide in front of you. Now, I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to explain to you why insurance is a critical part of your disaster preparedness and mitigation. And it actually touches you in many ways. I'm going to start with your automobile. So a lot of you probably have recently seen instances where cars are damaged by falling trees or flood damage or other things. And you may hear someone say, well, my insurance didn't pay my claim. Well, if the person did not have full coverage on their vehicle, the insurance company is not required to pay for things like flood damage, trees falling on the car, or any other type of damage. So it's really important that you understand what your automobile insurance policy covers. The other big thing, and we hear it all the time, I'm a renter. So if something happens in my apartment or in the house that I'm renting, my landlord is responsible for my things. Absolutely not. Your landlord is responsible only for the structure, the building itself. Your things, your clothes, your electronic devices, your furniture, all of that is your responsibility. And the only way to protect those things is to actually have a renter's insurance policy. Now, that may sound simple because, okay, I go out and I rent from an apartment complex, and the apartment complex says, here's something that'll cover you. Just sign this document. You need to be careful because sometimes what you're purchasing from the landlord is not a true renter's insurance policy. It may just be a liability policy that's put in place to really protect the landlord or you if somebody slips and falls in your apartment, or if there's some damage to the premises. So it's really important that you understand, if you're a renter, that either you don't really care about insuring your own stuff and you're willing to take the rebuilding or getting your stuff back on your own and pay for it yourself, or you make sure that you've got a renter's insurance policy to cover you. Now, for those of you that are homeowners, it's a little more difficult because a homeowner's insurance policy covers some things, but it also specifically excludes others. Typically, things that are covered under a homeowner's policy: wind damage, fire, if someone breaks into your home, those things are generally covered. Things that are generally excluded: flooding. If the water seeps into your home, that's considered a flood, and that's going to be specifically excluded from your homeowner's insurance policy. You would have to buy a separate flood insurance policy to cover that loss. And there are even instances where you can buy that policy from the federal government, but then there are also places that you can buy a flood insurance policy from a private insurance company. Now, I've been giving you a ton of information, and it's late in the evening, and it probably sounds somewhat overwhelming. But what I would advise you to do is go to our website or follow us on social media, and you'll see at the bottom of this slide, the Facebook, the Twitter, and the Instagram. What we do is we have tons of short videos. We've got a video for renters. We've got a video for auto. We've got a video on homeowners. And the videos are all less than about 5 minutes. So you can sit back when you, on a rainy day, or when it's too hot to go outside, and learn, I say, nuggets, and pick up a nugget once a week. because those nuggets will help you be more informed and more prepared. And if ever you have an issue, a concern, or a question, the Maryland Insurance Administration has a trained staff that's available to assist you and answer all of your insurance questions. And if you think that you're not being treated properly by your insurance company, give us a call. We'll be happy to help. So thank you so much for your time this evening. And at the end, I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hatchett. I learned something new today, so I am glad that we had you all join us this evening. Insurance can be very, very tricky. So as I mentioned in the chat, I would encourage you all to answer your questions, get your questions answered while we have the experts here with us. And as Ms. Hatchett said, she's going to drop her contact information in the chat, and you all will be able to visit her or contact her at a later time. All right, so we're going to move right along throughout our agenda. Next, we're going to have our subject matter expert, Mr. Ahsan Bahadur, step up to the virtual platform and unmute himself to bring forth his presentation. Mr. Bahadur serves as an emergency planner here with the Office of Emergency Management. He is a Georgetown University alumnus in emergency and disaster management. He has extensive academic knowledge in emergency and disaster management. He has received various certifications and trainings from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, also known as FEMA, and the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, as we know as the CDC. Mr. Bahadur is extremely interested in implementing scientific planning methods in different fields of emergency management to include risk analysis, vulnerability assessment, hazard mitigation, which we're going to talk about this evening, and utilizing geographic information systems or GIS systems in emergency management. Mr. Bahadur, we are so excited to have you present this evening. Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ahsan Bahadur. I am emergency planner with the Office of Homeland Security, Office of Emergency Management. I will present shortly an interesting topic to you. It is interesting because you would be a different person at the end of this presentation. First, I want to break down the hazard mitigation in two words, hazard and mitigation. Hazard is a source of danger or risk, like any active volcano in this picture. Mitigation is to make something less dangerous, serious, or painful. If the dinosaurs knew how they could mitigate the asteroid impact, they would not die out. You might want to know how would it be possible. To answer this question, you need to know the meaning of the risk. Yet a suntan would be fine, but the impact of sun rays on your skin will increase over time and would burn your skin. At this point, sun rays would be a risk for your health. Sun ray is a hazard, but when it burns your skin, it is a risk. Hope you can now tell me the difference between a hazard and a risk. According to Prince George's County Hazard Mitigation Plan, flood, tornado, fire, heat wave, and winter storm are the most frequent hazards in our community. I will talk about these hazards and mitigation strategies shortly. I do have a question for you. Do you think climate change would increase the frequencies of hazard-related incidents? Please provide your answers in the chat and my colleagues will check your answers. I will answer this question in the questions and answers section of this presentation. Flood is the most frequent hazard in our country. You might see flooding, but a simple description of a flood is an overflow of water that submerges land that is usually dry. You need to know whether you live on a floodplain or not. A floodplain is a generally flat area of land next to the river or stream. I will explain in the next slide how you would be able to find out whether you live on a floodplain or not. How could you find out whether you live on a flood-prone area or not? These are some online applications that you can use your address to find out how much you are at the risk of flooding. There are some mitigation actions that you can take to reduce the impact of flooding. Some of these actions are costly, like elevation of your property, and you can see this example in Figure 1. Some of them are affordable, like using sandbags to make a flood wall, or not living close to coastlines and floodplains. You can see examples of these actions in Figure 2 and 1. Tornado is the second frequent hazard in our country, and it is a narrow, violently rotating column of air that extends from a thunderstorm to the ground. I explained the tornado as a hazard. Should you try to escape from a tornado? I give you 10 seconds to provide your answers in the chat, because in the next slide, you will find out the correct answer. I believe by looking at this slide, you can answer the previous question correctly. You should move to your basement. If you do not have a basement, move to an interior room with no windows. In the next slide, I will talk about more mitigation actions for tornado. There are other mitigation actions that you can take for minimizing the impact of tornado, like building a safe room in your house, using laminated or impact residential glass, reinforce your garage doors, and utilizing window shutters. Fire is a hazard, but residential fire is one of the top 3 frequent hazards in Prince George's County. A fire involves the destructive components of burning. Now, tell me, what would you take with you in the event of a fire? Please provide your answer in the chat to share it with other individuals. There is no right or wrong answer, but just think about life safety before writing down your answers in the chat. There are some simple mitigation actions that you can take for the fire, such as installation of smoke detectors and sprinklers. But do not forget to change the battery of a chirping smoke detector. I want to talk about one of the most important mitigation actions which could be helpful for most of natural hazard, and it is the insurance. Insurance is one of the best ways to protect you from financial loss. Just imagine that you do not buy an auto insurance and drive your car. Hazard-related insurance is important as your car insurance. For example, you have leased an apartment and fire has destroyed all of your belongings. It would be a huge financial loss if you have not bought a renter's insurance and consider it the value of your belongings in your renter's insurance. Heathwave is another frequent hazard in our country, and it is an air mass of high temperature covering an extended area and moving relatively slowly. I will talk about how you could mitigate the impact of heat waves shortly. To mitigate the impact of heat waves, find a place with air conditioning. Avoid any intense physical activities. Wear light clothes. Keep your body hydrated. Watch any signs of heat cramps or exhaustion. Never leave people or pets in a closed car and check on your family members and neighbors. Now I talk about the last frequent but not the least hazard in our county. A snowstorm is a heavy fall of snow, especially with a high wind. I will talk about the mitigation actions for the snowstorm in the next slide. Avoid travel or commute during a snowstorm. If you do not have any options, make sure that your gas tank is full. Put flashlight, water, ice scraper, shovel, blankets, jumping cable, and first aid kit in your car. Also, make sure that your cell phone is fully charged. Do not forget to wear warm and layers of clothes to protect your body against the cold weather. I hope that this presentation could be helping you to think about hazard mitigation proactively. And please let me know if you have any question regarding hazard mitigation.
Awesome. All right. So we've reached the most interactive point of our webinars this evening, which is our question and answer period. So I would like to first say that I appreciate all of you because you all were very, very chatty in the chat and I love it. We got a lot of great answers and some great questions. So I'm going to punt a couple to you, Mr. Bahadur, and we will go from there. One question that came up in the chat was what can be done with zoning and developers to prevent overexpansion of construction in floodplains?
So to answer this question, I would say urban planning has a huge and key role to mitigate the impact of like flooding in some flood-prone areas. So developers should follow the guidelines and building codes and also urban planning regulations, which are approved by the county and other local authorities or state authorities.
So this question also came from Ms. Charlotte Stasio. Her follow-up question is, what about people who cannot leave?
There are some, if there are some like, if the people are living in the flood-prone area, I understand that like relocation is so hard and sometimes it's not possible, but the only thing they can do is just try to take the mitigation actions to minimize the impact of flooding. Other than developers or like those people that they are involving in like constructing like communities, they should follow the guidelines and regulations. And I'm sure that like most of the local authorities, they enforce those like regulations, and sometimes they need to update their regulations annually or biannually, and those developers should follow those regulations.
Yes.
I hope that I could answer that question correctly.
Yes, thank you so much. Ms. Stasio, if you have any follow-up questions, please do drop them in the chat. I'd like to punt this question over to Ms. Hatchett, if you're still with us, Ms. Hatchett. This question comes from Mr. Stefan. For a homeowner's policy, is there general guidance, a percentage, factor, or otherwise, for how much the dwelling coverage amount can or should exceed the home's appraised market value? And is there a standard process for having the dwelling coverage cost reassessed by the insurance company in cases where the homeowner believes the dwelling coverage amount is far too high?
So let's start from the question about what your home should be insured for. Looking at the market value is not the appropriate place. It's how much it's going to cost to rebuild your home. Because at the end of the day, all the insurance company is going to pay is the amount that it costs to rebuild your home. So if it's only going to cost you $250,000 to rebuild your home, and you have $350,000 worth of insurance coverage, you're overinsured and you have been paying too much for your policy in premiums. Essentially, what you need to do is look at, and your insurance producer, also known as an agent, can help you, because they all have databases and things that'll tell you, okay, you've got a brick home, you're this much square footage, you have these types of floors. You're looking for how much it costs to replace your home. Most insurance companies are going, and if you still have a mortgage, are going to require that you have 80% of the cost to rebuild your home is going to be the basis for the insurance. And if you believe that, because a lot of the homeowners policies have something called an inflation guard, so that amount that it's costing to insure your home may start going up, but you can always ask that producer or insurance company to reevaluate to make sure that you're not overinsured. Just like you don't want to be underinsured, you also don't want to be overinsured, because that's wasting money.
Ms. Hatchett, I might need to have a one-on-one session with you, because I am learning so much this evening. And so thank you for that response. And I do have one other question, and this might be a two-part between you, Mr. Bahadur, and Ms. Hatchett. How can I get more information about insurance? Is there an information session that I can attend? Where can I get resources on this topic?
So as I said before, we have those short videos, but also we have webinars frequently that talk about different types of insurance coverage. We have specific webinars on homeowners insurance. If you are getting ready to buy a home, we encourage you to attend some of our webinars for first-time home buyers, telling you things you should look at, things you should consider. So all of our webinars, the ones that we have had, are on our website. And then you should always keep and just let us know if you have some specific questions, because we are frequently creating new webinars, because that's our role. Our role is to help educate you.
Awesome. And you dropped that link in the chat for us so that we can access that easily. So we have lots of questions. I'm going to take a couple more, and rest assured that if your question was not answered, we'll capture it and we will respond to your question on a one-on-one situation basis. I did want to ask the question. Ms. Riazi asked Ms. Hatchett, please offer some insight into a situation where a homeowner is being charged a deductible for various claims resulting from the same flooding event. The damages were discovered at different stages of flood recovery as repairs were made.
So that is going to be one of those circumstances where you need to file a complaint with us so that we can look at it. Now, also, let me put this preface in place. If it's truly a flood insurance claim, we don't have jurisdiction if you've purchased your flood insurance from the federal government, but we work arm in arm and we can get you some answers. So while we can't tell the federal government what to do, what we can do, it's a part of our partnership, is to make sure they're responding to your questions. But if what you're calling is a flooding event, and it's in fact, if it's not a flooding event, because not all water damage is a flood. Sometimes it's water sewer backup. Sometimes it's a pipe burst or something like that. And those are things that we have jurisdiction over. So file a complaint with us. And what we'll do is we'll first try to help you understand what's going on. And then we, if in the appropriate circumstances, we'll also conduct an investigation.
Thank you, Ms. Hatchett. And it looks like your colleague, Ms. Peach, dropped both links to the webinars and to how to file a complaint in the chat. So Mr. Bahadur, I do have another question for you. Why is hazard mitigation important for individuals?
So hazard mitigation can minimize the impact of disasters, such as safety and financial loss. It also helps like to bounce back quickly and reduce the time of response and recovery to an emergency incidents. That's why it's very important for individual to be part of like this aspects of emergency management and try to implement the hazard mitigation strategies for their safety and also their belongings.
Thank you, Mr. Bahadur. My last question this evening is going to come from Ms. Michelle Ross. Ms. Ross asked, what items would you suggest go in an emergency kit like sheltering in place? So before Mr. Bahadur, you tackle this one, I'm going to put a plug into everyone that's joining us this evening. We are going to be hosting, and I mean the Office of Emergency Management, is going to be hosting an emergency preparedness expo on Saturday, September the 18th. Please, please, please do listen out for information and details about this event. This type of event is where you can come and learn how to be prepared, what goes in your kit, sheltering in place, etc. So please, please, please do keep your eyes and ears out for information on our expo. And I would also just like to touch base before you answer Mr. Bahadur and let Ms. Ross know, I'm going to put a link to our webinar series webpage in the chat, and you will have the opportunity to go back and view our first webinar, which specifically discussed preparedness, kits, and how to be ready in the event of an emergency. So I will drop that in the chat. Mr. Bahadur, do you want to add anything to I kind of answered that, I'm sorry. Do you want to add anything?
No, sure. Just a couple more items like the first aid kit and also water, non-perishable foods, and also the flashlight, and they also need to have, again, try to keep their cell phone fully charged in case of like power outage or cell phone outage, so they could contact like emergency responder, because normally it takes like 72 hours for the first responders from different levels to respond to like huge disasters or like huge emergency incidents. So that's like the items that they should have it in their preparedness kit. I remember that my colleague Rashid Palmer, in our preparedness webinar last month, he explained and went through all the details. And it would be a good idea also to share the links of that webinar. They could go and just watch the webinar and learn a lot about the preparedness and how could they be much more prepared, and how could they make their preparedness kit like much more appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Bahadur. I just dropped the website, the webinar webpage in the chat, like I promised. You can register for future webinars and also view previous webinars, and including presentations at this link that just got dropped in the chat. And I don't think we have any other questions. We had a great deal of dialogue, so I tried to get to the majority of the questions this evening. I would like to tell you all, I love my first batch from my first webinar, but you all were way more interactive. So thank you for helping us have this dialogue this evening. We all learned something new, I hope. The last thing that we have as we wrap up this presentation this evening is we'd like for you all to do one more small favor for us. Oh, Asan, I'm so sorry. You want to talk about your references real quick?
If you're interested to learn more, please look at our references. And I wish this webinar would be helpful to learn about hazard mitigation, and I wish you a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Bahadur and Ms. Hatchett, for your presentations this evening. We really appreciate your time. So I'm going to let everyone get to your families and your dinners soon. If I could just have one more minute. We would like for you all to please let us know how we are doing in our series. Oh, I'm jumping all around this evening. My apologies, Shelley. Ms. Gooding, please step forward into the virtual space and introduce yourself. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Shelley Gooding. I am a certified emergency manager working as the National Capital Region emergency planner in the Office of Emergency Management in Prince George's County. On September 14th, we will be hosting our third webinar series, and this webinar is titled Response, and I will be leading that webinar. And just to kind of give you a little bit of information about what you can expect, how you plan for and respond to an emergency can make a significant difference in the outcome for you and your family. A family emergency plan is a terrific way to prepare for your family for worst case scenarios. A family emergency plan guides the preparations, communications, and procedures for your family to respond in disaster. By simply writing out your plan, committing it to memory, educating all family members on the plan, and practicing it will ensure that you alleviate some stress and make it easier to find a safer situation. You might be thinking that this sounds like a big project and that you simply don't have time for it, but I assure you, not only is it simple to do, but the peace of mind that you and your family will have when it's completed is well worth the effort. So hopefully you're thinking, okay, so how do I create a family emergency plan? Tune in with us next month on September 14th to find out how. Thanks.
My apologies, Shelley. Thank you so much for that information about our next webinar. We hope that you all register to attend. So we've talked a lot about preparedness and how to be ready and how to lessen our risk. Now it's time to talk about what happens in the event that we do have an emergency and how we can respond to it. So I'm really looking forward to Shelley's presentation on September the 14th. All right, now I'm in the right place. Your feedback is very, very important to us. So we do ask that you all tell us what you thought about our webinar this evening. Please complete the survey. The link will be in our chat box. It will only take you a couple of minutes. We really do appreciate honest feedback. It does help us guide future presentations and how we do projects in the future. Other than that, I thank you all for joining us this evening. We look forward to seeing you on September the 14th. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.